Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to thank Chairman Goodlatte for his leadership on this bill and a host of others on the Judiciary Committee. Mr. Speaker, I want to have a pop quiz. That may seem unfair to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but I'm going to give them a hint. The answer to every one of the questions is the same. I'm going to read a quote, and then you tell me who said it. These last few years, we've seen an unacceptable abuse of power, having a president whose priority is expanding his own power. Any guess on who said that, Mr. Speaker? It was Senator Barack Obama. Here's another one. No law can give Congress a backbone if it refuses to stand up as a co-equal branch. The Constitution made it. Senator Barack Obama. What do we do with a president who can basically change what Congress passed by attaching a letter saying, I don't agree with this part or that part? Senator Barack Obama. I taught the Constitution for 10 years. I believe in the Constitution. Senator Barack Obama. And my favorite, Mr. Speaker, one of the most important jobs of the Supreme Court is to guard against the encroachment of the executive branch on the power of the other branches. And I think the Chief Justice has been a little too willing and eager to give the President more power than I think the Congress or the Constitution originally intended. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is how in the world can you get before the Supreme Court if you don't have standing? What did the President mean by that when he looked to the Supreme Court to rein in executive overreach? If you don't have standing, how can you possibly get before the Supreme Court? So my question, Mr. Speaker, is what's changed? How does going from being a senator to a president rewrite the Constitution? What's different from when he was a senator? Mr. Speaker, we are not a country where the end justifies the means, no matter how good your motivations may be. We all swore an allegiance to the same document that the President swears allegiance to faithfully execute the law. So I will be listening intently during this debate for one of my colleagues to explain to me what that phrase means. What does it mean not to execute the law, but when the framers thought enough of that phrase to add the modifier faithfully? What does that mean? If a president does not faithfully execute the law, Mr. Speaker, what are our remedies? Do we just sit and wait on another election? Do we use the power of the purse, the power of impeachment? Those are punishments. Those are not remedies. The remedy is to do exactly what Barack Obama said to do, to go to court, to go to the Supreme Court, and have the Supreme Court say once and for all, we don't pass suggestions in this body, Mr. Speaker. We don't pass ideas. We pass laws, and we expect them to be faithfully executed. And with that, I would yield back to the gentleman from Virginia.
Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Bob Wolf, and you're listening to We the People 1787 on this, our country's birthday. And that was the voice of Congressman Trey Gowdy on the House floor. Anyway, I want to wish you all a happy 4th of July. I hope that you're going to stay safe. And I'm not here really today to entertain you as much as bring some other thoughts to you. I'm not here to make you feel all warm and cozy. I'm here to make you think for a few moments while you listen to this radio program from wherever you may happen to be. Some of you might be out driving around today and you've got us tuned into your radio there in the car. You may be having a cookout with a radio playing, or you might be driving to the beach or coming back from the beach, but finding pleasure, hopefully, from somewhere at this time, I hope. Some will not be with us, even though I'm sure that they would have wanted to be, because they gave themselves in behalf of your freedom to be doing whatever you're doing today. I'm going to take a close-up look today with my special guest at the main document that was to make sure that your right to enjoy a day like today was never taken away from you. Does it sound impossible to you that something such as that could have ever happened to you and your family, or could happen to you and your family, to have your basic rights taken away? Well, it hasn't happened entirely yet, mainly because of one document. This major document stands out in American history, arguably as the greatest ever written by men of freedom and of Christian passion. What is that document, you ask? It's the U.S. Constitution. As the American statesman Henry Clay said, the Constitution of the United States was not made merely for the generation that then existed, but for all posterity. Unlimited, undefined, endless, perpetual posterity. This document has been a beacon to all men and women who value freedom. It is just as meaningful now as it was when it was written. Every September 17th, we should celebrate the founding of our American Constitution. This document was designed to clearly define and separate the powers of the central government, the powers of the states, the rights of the people, and how the representatives of the people should be elected. It was on September 17th, 1787, that this document was ratified. No matter how much we argue about the details of what its meaning is today, in the opinion of many, the Constitution signed in Philadelphia on that day in September 1787 represents the greatest expression of statesmanship and compromise that was ever written. In just 4 handwritten pages, not 1,500 or 2,500 pages or 5,000 pages, just 4 handwritten pages. The Constitution gives us no less than the owner's manual to this greatest form of government that the world has ever known. We do live in the land of the free, and as long as the Constitution still stands, and as long as we have patriots who will stand for us, we always will live in the land of the free. This is the written guarantee, this Constitution, that you have a concrete, solid agreement, if you will, with our government, that you will not become a slave to totalitarianism, fascism, or a cruel, oppressive form of government. Not ever. But do not make the mistake of thinking that there are not great powers of evil who are making ready their weapons to destroy this great founding document forever. It's taking place every day in plain sight. Those powers would just as soon replace this document today. Replacing it with what, you might ask? Perhaps you are paying attention, or perhaps you are out in la-la land, not knowing that you are losing a little more of your freedoms under evil powers each week that goes by. I'll be introducing my guest today in just a moment, who is an amazing man, a constitutional expert. But first, I'd like to make a short announcement. It's about our website. It's WeThePeople1787.com. It's visited lately each month by about 700 to 800 people per month. This site is a place where you can go to listen to many of the shows, in fact, all of the shows that we've done over the course of the last several months, over a year now. You can not only listen, but you can see each of these radio programs of past weeks and months, broadcast for your benefit as MP4 videos. You'll see video excerpts, pictures, and other information that is included in each of the videos on our site. And by the way, there won't be any annoying pop-ups on our site or annoying forms for you to fill in with your name and email address. We're not out there for that. But what you will find are 100 or so amazing videos on several pages, like the reports on Benghazi by former prosecutor Trey Gowdy, the man you just heard speaking a moment ago. He's now congressman and head of the investigation committee to reveal to America and the world what really happened on that night of horror while American authorities sat in the Situation room and did nothing or chose to go back to bed while our brave Navy SEALs fought for over 7 hours with their very and for their very lives and for those in the consulate. Ultimately, they paid the highest price possible for giving only a few their freedom from such a horrible death. But I'll let you explore our site to your heart's content to see for yourself what we have done with this site to bring this information to you. Now back to our Constitution. You'll find buttons on the front page of our site, or a button, I should say, on the front page of the site, and that's going to take you right to constitutional learning seminars in our video form to teach and inspire you and your children about the most powerful 4 pages ever written for your freedom under God. You may call in during this 1-hour show today, by the way, because this is live. No, it's not recorded, not yet anyway. Just dial us at 904-222-8255. 904-222-8255. We will welcome your participation for just taking a moment of your day. My guest today, and I hope he's on the line. Is he on the line, John? Okay, great.
I'm here.
Great. My guest today, let me do a little bit of an introduction here for that. On We the People 1787 is Mr. Earl Taylor Jr. He's president of the National Center for Constitutional Studies, and he has taught The Making of America, a constitutional study course to thousands of people over the past 20 years throughout the nation. The buttons that I spoke about a moment ago are the button on the front page of our website under Constitutional Studies. Will lead you to that website where you will find the videos I'm talking about. There are very many. There are quite a few videos, all on the study of making America and our Constitution. So he has also developed other study courses for a wide range of participants, from high school students to state legislators. He's right here on the phone with us now. He's calling all the way from California. So I welcome Mr. Earl Taylor Jr. to the microphone. How you doing, Mr. Taylor?
I'm good, Bob. Thank you. Actually, I'm in Arizona today.
Oh, okay.
A little warmer.
All right. Well, I want you to give, before we go into a break, I want you to try and give us some explanation of all that you're offering.
Well, of course, the mission of our organization, the National Center for Constitutional Studies, is to reacquaint Americans with the exciting message of the founders of our country. And you might say, well, okay, there's a lot of courses out there on the founding of America, but what's so different? Well, we present it in such a way that people can realize the founders had answers to nearly every problem we have in America today. That's a big statement, but you don't realize how true it is unless you study the founders, their documents, their principles, and almost everything that we're challenged with today can be resolved by resorting to the words and the counsel of the founders. And so that's thrilling, and especially when you teach it to young people. I also teach government to high school seniors, and my goodness, when these young people light up with these correct principles, of course, the first question is Mr. Taylor, well, this sounds so simple. Why aren't we doing it today? And then, of course, you have to tell them the rest of the story. But that's what the founders' message will do. It'll put fire in your bones, and it's a great message. That's what we do throughout the United States, is teach this wonderful message. Because as you probably know, America's got some big challenges right now, and we need to find answers that work. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, Bob.
Well, I know that you have the website that I spoke of a moment ago, and what I'm going to do is when we create the video that I spoke of that will be this particular show, which will probably be up and on our website by Wednesday morning, what I'm speaking of is I would like for you to give your website address over the air, and we're going to put that on the video so that anyone watching the video is going to be able to not only make a mental note but write it down as they see it. And those who are interested interested right now can write down what you say and go to your website now if they wish.
Sure. Well, our website is NCCS. N is in National Center for Constitutional Studies, NCCS.net. And if you go there, you can see our online seminars and courses and other materials. And I mean, it's an amazing story when you tell it the way the founders told it. Their message is exciting. Well, it was a new thing for them in their day. You know, today's July the 4th, and we celebrate the Declaration of Independence. But you realize, Bob, 239 years ago, when they adopted that document, there was no country in the world that believed in the equality of mankind. And here they come out and say all men are created equal. And what a marvel, even in the United States.
Quite a statement to make.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. You hang on. Don't go anywhere. I'll pick you up again right after the break is over. So we will get right back to you, Earl. Hang on there. This is Bob Wolf. You're listening to We the People 1787.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Well, you don't have Forrest today. You do have Bob Wolf, though. I'm sitting in for Forrest. Hope that he's having a nice day on this 4th of July weekend. And I hope that you're having a great day, too. I'm talking with Earl Taylor Jr. He's the president of National Center for Constitutional Studies. Earl Taylor Jr. has taught the Making of America constitutional study course to thousands of people over the past 20 years throughout the nation. He's developed other study courses for a wide range of participants, from high school students to state legislators. And it's his desire to begin to train young people in the most important areas of our constitutional, our Constitution. Mr. Taylor established one of the first charters high schools in Arizona. And I'm going to get back to him. Are you still on there, Earl?
I'm here, Bob.
Great. You developed, I think, something what is called the 5,000-year leap. Am I correct?
Well, actually, that was a book that we published, first edition in 1981. Actually, the author is Dr. W. Cleon Skousen, but...
well, you studied under him, though, for 20 years.
Oh, yes, and he's since deceased. So, that book is an amazing bestseller book outlining the 28 great ideas that the founders came up with to institutionalize the freedom that we have. And I expect my high school students not only to memorize those 28 principles, but to be very familiar with them, so that when they see them in play or violated today, they can immediately recognize it. And
that's just it. If people have constitutional rights, and there are rights that you have under the Constitution that some people might not recognize when that right is actually being violated. Go ahead.
Yeah, and people don't realize the extent our founders went to, starting clear back in the days of the Pilgrims and Jamestown, when both of those societies were started under completely different rules than we think. No private property. You have a leader. He'll assign you your tasks. And both of those settlements, colonies, realized, you know what, this is failure. The work isn't getting done. If people don't have the incentive of private property, they won't work hard generally. And so they practically were destroyed, but they changed the system. And so the founders wrote, don't ever do that. And so they started to develop these principles. So from Jamestown until the Constitution was written 180 years later, I like to call that period the period of trial and error, where they tried some things, and some things worked, and so they wrote it down. They said, do this. Some things didn't work, so they said, never do that. So the time they got to write the Constitution in 1787, they pretty well knew the principles they wanted to pursue. They disagreed on the methods quite a bit, but they were pretty similar in principles. You might be interested to know, Bob, that one of the things that they learned over this 180-year period, and they told us, they said, don't ever let the federal government or the government tax people based on their incomes.
Isn't that strange?
And they felt so strongly about that kind of a tax. They said it will actually cause the government to get into the private affairs of people, and it will be too forceful. They said taxation needs to be less forceful, and that's why a sales tax is not a direct tax. It's an indirect tax, and that's the kind of tax they envisioned. They put a prohibition of the income tax type right into the Constitution. I don't know, not many people know that. That's just an example.
We're coming up on another break, and I want to hold you over. And we're having a very interesting topic here today on our constitutional rights and the principles of liberty. By the way, right after the break, I want to try to see if we can go into some of the 28 principles that you might think are maybe the most important ones. So we're going to go ahead and into the break. This is Bob Wolf. You're listening to We the People 1787. And you can also go to our website if you wish. It's wethepeople1787.com.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
As I said before, it's not Forrest, it's Bob Wolf. I'm sitting in for Forrest today, it being the 4th of July. A lot of us do work today, those in hospitals, and gee whiz, I got a cup of coffee a little while ago, and there was somebody there at the donut shop to give me a cup of coffee. I thought, what a wonderful thing. Somebody else is working today. I want to share this with you. I'm talking with Mr. Earl Taylor Jr., president of National Center for Constitutional Studies, NCCS. And I want to share this with you. The purpose of the NCCS is to teach Americans the exciting message of our founding fathers, and where they got their great ideas and how they put them all together into a constitution for the establishment of the first free people in modern times. So, Mr. Taylor, you're still hanging in there?
I'm still here.
Great. I wanted to talk a little bit more about this 5,000-year leap, the principles, the 28 principles of liberty. And perhaps maybe you might have some of these that might be more important than others you might want to discuss, because 28 of them is a lot for a short radio show like this. But what can you tell us?
Well, of course, the one that probably is the most, what should I say, popular to talk about right now is the fact that is principle number 19, which says only limited and carefully defined powers should be delegated to government, all others being retained in the people. So the founders knew that in forming a union, you have to, first of all, give the federal government the power to govern, and then turn right around and make sure it's controlled so it doesn't get out of hand. So if you look in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, they listed about 20 powers that Congress can do, 20 things that Congress can do. That's 2020, not 20,000.
Wow.
And so if you're a congressman today, and or whenever, and you're presented with a bill, and there's thousands of them that are dropped in the hopper, and the first thing you should do, for example, let's say a few years ago you were having to vote on a bill called the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Okay, so you go to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and you look down the list, because it's listed right there. Congress has the power to. There's about 20 things. And you look down the list, let's see, health care. I don't see it. So what should a congressman do? notice it doesn't matter how good the bill might be or how many people it might be going to take care of. That doesn't matter. The thing that matters is to a congressman, or should, do I have the authority from the people to even deal with this issue?
Right.
And you have to say, no, I don't. So the vote must be no. Doesn't matter how good or bad the bill is. That doesn't take very long. So you vote no, and then you say, next issue, please. See how simple that is?
I do, sir. And
that's what the founders wanted us to do. And then you go over to Article 2, which is the executive, and you read his powers. Do you realize there's 6 areas that the president is supposed to operate in? 6, not 6,000.
Right.
Then you turn over to Article 3. That's the judiciary.
Right, our Supreme Court.
You look at their powers, and it says the judicial power shall extend to. Now this is to the federal courts, and then it's listed, and there's 11 kinds of cases assigned to the federal courts. So if a case, let's say a case comes up, let's just pick one here. I know. Let's say a case comes up having to do with marriage, redefining marriage. So a federal judge, whether it's the Supreme Court or a court of appeals or a district court, would look in the Constitution and say, do I have the authority from the people to deal with this kind of an issue? And you look and you say, gee, I don't. So you say, okay, those are state matters, so those should be left to state courts. See how the Constitution, if you read it, it's very simple,
right,
and follow it, we could solve these problems.
I think that we really could, but I think that certain people have warped our Constitution, warped our constitutional rights, and they've tried to create something brand new out of this that never was intended to begin with.
That's true. See, now Congress should say, and the people should say, hey, wait a minute. You are overstepping your bounds. Did you know, Bob, most people think the Constitution says that judges are appointed for life. Doesn't say that at all. It says they're appointed during good behavior. And do you know, in the early part of this country, they would get rid of judges for swearing, for example, because they felt like that wasn't good behavior.
Right.
Well, you show that a judge is not following the Constitution, which he took an oath to follow, he should be out. None of this lifetime stuff.
Right.
But see, this is just another example of how the Constitution could solve our problems. But who studies it nowadays? We've had lawyers take our class and come up to us and say, I learned more about the Constitution this day in your class than I did through all 3 years of law school.
Wow.
You know, when you go to law school, you take a course in constitutional law, for example, you're given a 3-inch thick book, and it says right on it, constitutional law. You know what's in there?
What?
Cases. Oh. Cases that the Supreme Court has said, this is what the Constitution means. And true enough, if you're going to be successful nowadays, you have to know Supreme Court cases. But they don't study the Constitution in its original intent.
Right. So what's happened is that a lot of things have gone before the Supreme Court to make a decision so that the rest of us would all have to supposedly live by that decision.
Yeah.
When, in fact, it never should have gone before them and had to have a decision made on it in the first place.
Yeah. And we have let these judges set themselves up basically as gods.
Right.
And Jefferson, these are a great quote from Jefferson. It reminds me of Scalia's dissent last week on this marriage thing. Jefferson says these people they have passions like any human being do. They have prejudices. They're not any real godly figures, so don't let them tell the people what to do. And that's not the province of a court, anyway.
And they're not supposed to make law.
That's
and
correct.
It appears to me that that's exactly what they did when they made the law regarding health care.
They create new rights, abortion rights, health care rights. Oh, yeah.
They made the law when it comes to those that can get married. I mean, that are same-sex marriage.
Getting back to the 28 principles, it's kind of interesting that when Washington was inaugurated, I should say just before he was inaugurated, he made a comment. He says, "I'm not sure that we can really recover and solve our problems, but we're going to try." Well, when they adopted these principles, Washington said 2 years later, "If anyone would have told me that we could be on our road to recovery this quickly, I would have thought them a fit candidate for the madhouse."
Wow.
And even he was surprised that these principles would do what they did. Amazing. Because the United States, as you probably know, under the Confederation, almost fell apart. And Washington was just thrilled that these principles did what they did in 2 to 3 years. That same thing could happen today if we restore sanity and the founders' formula. So it's amazing. It has answers, Bob. It really does.
I know, and it amazes me when I think about how smart our framers of a Constitution really were.
Yeah.
They created this terrific handwritten instrument, to last now over 200 years. And I know that there are many who wish to undo this Constitution, to maybe rewrite it with something that I don't think most people would even like.
Well, the argument is the founders could never have foreseen such an advanced society that we have today 200 years later. And so we need to come up with a better document giving more power to the president, because all you have otherwise is gridlock in Washington. That's their argument. They actually have a new constitution written, ready to go. But
I know there are many of those who would like to have the president be a ruler, a supreme ruler, just makes all the decisions, make the laws, do away with Congress completely.
But see, the founders already experienced that stuff. They dealt with something that never changes over time, and that is human nature. That as soon as you give somebody a little power, as they suppose, they almost immediately begin to exercise unrighteous dominion, as it says.
Right.
And over people, and they want more power. And the founders knew that would happen no matter how advanced your society becomes.
And they knew it because they had come out of something like that.
That's right, yeah. And they studied history. That happens throughout all history.
Right. This is something that our people here in this country, especially those that have never been in a communist country, for instance. I know of stories from people that tell me that they lived in Cuba, and they were not allowed to be seen carrying a Bible.
Yeah, that's right.
What would happen to them? Terrible punishment.
And so that's why, Bob, our Constitution is never obsolete, because it deals with something that never changes, and that is human nature.
We're coming up on another break. I can hear the music playing. And so I want to hold you over for that last, I think it's our last segment coming up here.
That's fine.
And so we're going to continue to talk about the 28 Principles of Liberty, the 5,000-Year Leap, and maybe some of the other books that you have on your website there. This is a terrific website. I spent quite a bit of time taking a look at it. A lot of videos there for you to train not only mom and dad, but maybe the children as well. This is Bob Wolf, and this is AM 600, WVOB, and 100.3, The Answer. You're listening to We the People, 1787.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
Well, I know Forrest is off doing something really neat on this 4th of July, and what you've got is Bob Wolf as his replacement. I hope that I'm doing okay for you. You're listening to We the People, 1787, and I have had and still have on the line Earl Taylor Jr., president of National Center for Constitutional Studies. The website is nccs.net. That's nccs.net. We're going to put that on the video as soon as this goes up on the website so that those of you who want to go back to that recording or those of you who missed the show or part of the show can go there and hear the entire show. Before I forget it, I want to thank Mr. Taylor sincerely for being with us today on this 4th of July weekend. I know that probably a lot of our listenership is down today because people are out doing all kinds of things, but still, there are those that drive in their cars, and there are those that have radio on for various reasons, and they are listening to our show. So I do want to thank Mr. Taylor for being with us because I'm sure that there are other things he could have done beside working today and being with us on the show. So thanks.
My pleasure, Bob. No problem.
Okay. Well, we were talking about the 28 Principles of Liberty and the 5,000-year leap. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the books on your website that I noticed there were quite a number of books there.
Well, besides the 5,000-year leap, which is the one I always recommend, that's the primer. But there's the Making of America. Now that takes quotes from the founders, and every phrase in the Constitution has some quotes to the founders attached to it to explain what that phrase means and why they put it in there. That's a very valuable reference book for the Constitution. And we have other books. We call them our classic series. The Real George Washington, The Real Thomas Jefferson, The Real Benjamin Franklin. These are books, you know, Bob, there's hundreds of books out on these men, but if you notice that most books on these men are written from a particular perspective, the perspective of the author. And so we say, we want these men to tell their story mostly in their own words. And that's what you'll find in these books. It's thrilling. And you'll hear them say things that you've never heard them say before. And anyway, it's a good way to get familiar with the founders. So we also have a DVD called A More Perfect Union, which was made actually for the bicentennial in 1987. And it's the best reproduction of it's a movie form of what actually happened in that summer of Philadelphia in 1787. So, it's a great website to look through and to learn about the greatness of America. I might just mention, if we have a minute,
yeah, sure.
One of those, another one of those principles that I love to talk about is principle number 4, which says, without religion, the government of a free people cannot be maintained.
I think I saw that. I think it's very, very important.
This is something that is almost lost today because there's this feeling out there that religion and government needs to be separate. You don't talk about religion. Well, government doesn't endorse a specific denomination or a specific faith. That's true. But religion is where people get the standards for morality. You know, you've heard people say, well, I can be a moral person, I don't need religion. Well, my first question is, well, what kind of morality do you follow? And they'll say something like, well, my own morality. Well, what's that? Well, it's whatever I believe. Well, see, it has no standards, no basis for it. Religion gives standards to moral thinking. And so the founders were very religious people, loved the Bible, loved the Old Testament. Jewish people, the Jews were a very influential part of the founding of America. The Judeo-Christian tradition is what helped found this country. And we have to stay with that if we're going to hold on to this beautiful Constitution. Otherwise, as the founders said, you're going to lose it.
Things are becoming so diluted today in the morals of this country and the people of this country.
Yeah.
And in religious beliefs, people say, well, I don't want to go to church today, or I don't want to I don't believe in the Bible because it was written by men. And I've heard all kinds of excuses why people do not want to live under the laws of the Bible.
One of the beautiful things about Judeo-Christian tradition is that it's so tolerant and accepting of so many people. That's why there's so many minorities in America. We're a melting pot, as it says, and because
we got about maybe 30 seconds, or we got about 3 minutes. Okay, we got about 3 minutes. He says. I'm looking at the engineer.
Under this Judeo-Christian philosophy, we are accepting of people. We may not agree with them all, but we're tolerant. You go try to found a church in Israel even, or in Iran, or any of those, and you'll find out how tolerant other religions are. Christianity is very tolerant. So we say, come and hear and join, and if you don't believe, fine, but... and of course, the First Amendment grew out of that. Congress is to make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And many of us believe, particularly after this Supreme Court decision, that our religious liberty is at stake in not being able to practice what we believe. Those challenges are going to come.
I notice here one of the 28 principles is only limited and carefully defined powers should be delegated to government, all others being retained in the people. And that's right. Where we, the people, come in, because really, we are the government. Those folks that are up there are supposed to be doing what our will and working for us, but not governing us as tyrant rulers.
Right.
And that's
in the end, we can't blame anybody but ourselves. And, when half the people in this country are on some kind of a government dole, that's pretty scary, because they're going to keep voting for people who give them those government dole-outs. That's pretty scary.
I know that is, and also the number of people that could have voted, whether it was a Democrat or Republican or what it was, the number of people that could have voted and they just didn't, or they're not registered to vote and don't care about voting. And I've heard all the stories. Well, voting doesn't matter, and it's useless to vote because the people are going to do what they're going to elect who they want to elect. I've heard all those excuses.
Yeah,
it won't float your boat. But I want to say again that I appreciate you being with us today, and I've already seen to it that there is a button on the front page of our website to go to your courses, your video courses on your website, nccs.net.
Great.
So I'm going to sign off for today, and thank you again for being with us. This is Bob Wolf. You've been listening to We the People 1787 on WBOB, The Answer, 100.3 AM 600. Join us again next week, folks, at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.